So there I was, putting some dirt into some guy's car. It was for my job. Don't worry about it. The guy thanks me and says it's a lovely day, because it was, so I tell him, yeah, it's beautiful, not a cloud in the sky, because, there wasn't. And he says, yep, no chemtrails until you see them. And then he hopped into his car and drove away before I had the chance to respond. Not that I had any idea what I would have responded with if he had stuck around. Like, I've heard of contrails. I know about contrails, but he said chemtrails. And that's different. Now, I'm sure that you've seen contrails. You might know them as vapor trails, plane tracks, or something whimsical and cool. Plane farts. I'm talking about the clouds that planes leave behind when they're flying around up there. There are some people, like that very friendly gentleman who I put dirt in his car, who believe that there's something far more sinister about these plane farts. That they're more than just mere clouds. There's something going on with the government, and the government's involved in these plane farts somehow. I don't know. Well, that's not true. I do know. And you can too. So come along while I uncloud the mystery of chemtrails. So, planes burn fuel. If you didn't know that, I'm glad that I've told you. The results of burning that fuel is CO2, water, and soot. It's basically the same thing that's happening in your gas tank, but just, a lot more powerful. And seeing as the exhaust was just on fire, it's really freaking hot. But it's gonna cool down pretty rapidly once it's out in the atmosphere, because it's really cold up there. So the thing about air is that the hotter it is, the more moisture it's able to hold. And clouds are essentially just moisture, but they gotta condense around something. They don't just appear as water vapor in the air. They gotta have something to condense around. So because this moisture was just shot out of a jet engine with all the soot and grossness, it's got a lot of stuff to condense around as it cools down. Mostly soot. So all that moisture is gonna condense out of the air, turning into clouds. This occurs in the wake of a plane, and so obviously it's gonna be in a line. If a plane's doing this, you should be worried at Boeing. And that's all well and good. Most people agree about this process. This is the process of contrail formation. They're called that because it's a portmanteau of the words condensation and trail. Contrail. Most people who believe in chemtrails also believe in contrails, which does make things a little bit confusing when talking about this. I'm just gonna be as clear as I can right now. If I'm talking about the visual thing that you can see, I'm mostly gonna call that the contrail. Whereas when I'm talking about the conspiracy theories, I'm gonna call that a chemtrail. Don't get confused. Those who believe in them say that chemtrails are not like other contrails. They're just a little quirkier. And they say that you can tell the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail based on what it's doing up in the sky. During my research, most of the stuff that I was looking at was saying that a chemtrail will persist a lot longer, but I also saw a lot of stuff that said that they would dissipate a lot faster. So right off the bat, we have no agreement within this theory, so that's fun. They also say that chemtrails are going to be laid out in a grid, whereas just regular old contrails are going to be going every which way. Some people also say that a contrail that's broken up is actually a chemtrail, because they're flipping the machine on and off and off and on. Why would they need to do that? Okay. That being said, I am positive that there are people out there who just think that all contrails are chemtrails. Now you might be thinking, why would they want to coat the world in airplane farts? Well, nobody knows. but many people have many theories. One might even call them conspiracy theories. Nailed it! Yeah! Some folks believe that it's just some way that the government's controlling the weather. Other people, however, believe that it is a means of controlling us and our brains. But of course, there's no evidence for this whatsoever. There have been many experts who have examined pictures and videos of alleged chemtrails. All of them have concluded that there is no discernible difference between chemtrails and contrails. They don't persist longer, and they are not broken up weirdly. That's all just normal variations in atmospheric conditions. I don't know if you've noticed this, but clouds don't look the same. What? Go figure. While having a grid of contrails blanketing the sky might seem a little sinister, it actually makes a lot of sense when you just think about normal flight paths and wind. Most planes are going to be flying either north, south, or east-west. You know, one plane goes and leaves a trail, and then that trail gets blown, and then another plane goes, and that trail goes, and then another plane, and it just ends up being a grid. That doesn't mean that it's sinister, it just means that that's how planes fly and wind moves. There are also some claims that the more populated areas are going to be more likely to have chemtrails. Believe it or not, more populated areas just have more flights because there's more people doing stuff. Okay, so how did we get here? How did we get to this point where we got all these people thinking that contrails have chemicals that are controlling our brains? It all starts with the American military. Fucking hell. In 1996, the American Air Force released a paper called Weather as a Force Multiplier: Owning the Weather in 2025. As somebody living in 2025, it kind of feels like we are being owned by the weather and not the other way around. So this document is 53 pages long, and I obviously don't have the time to read all 53 pages. But I did read the abstract. It's clear that this is not a how to control the weather in 1996 guide. This is just like some guys in the military who were like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if by the year 2025 we were able to control the weather? It would give us the upper hand on the battlefield. This paper is really just an attempt to outline a potential pathway for which developments need to be made in order for the US military to be able to control the weather in 2025. Just gonna read the last little bit of the abstract here. Technology advancements in 5 major areas are necessary for an integrated weather modification capability. 1. Advanced nonlinear modeling techniques. 2. Computational capability. 3. Information gathering and transmission. 4. A global sensor array. And 5. Weather intervention techniques. They had none of that. All of those things are things that take a very long time to develop. A global sensor array? A global sensor array? I said it again, jeez. A global sensor array? Also, weather intervention techniques. They literally say, we don't have the techniques to intervene on the weather. Also, aren't chemtrails supposed to be laid out in a grid? A grid of straight lines? So why then are they saying that they need to research non-linear modeling techniques? Checkmate, chemtrailers. The point that I'm trying to make here is that this paper is merely a suggestion made by some folks in the military for an area of potential research. In the paper, they even refer to the ideas within the paper as being fictional. But of course, if there's one thing that I have learned in my years of working in customer service, it's that people don't want to read anything, period. People will literally create a global conspiracy theory rather than read a paper. I mean, to be fair, I didn't read the whole paper, but I read the abstract, and that's more than what most folks have done, I would say. Thank you. I am a hero. So over the next couple of years, there were a few individuals who just started wantonly accusing the American military of spraying the population with a mysterious substance and for generating unusual contrail patterns. Spooky. At this point, we're literally just talking about normal contrails that some people were like, hey, no, that's not a normal thing, with no other evidence or basis for that claim. So by the year 1999, the year I came into existence, the idea of chemtrails was broadcast by a radio host named Art Bell.
Coincidence? I think not!
This guy did something that I think is like a classic tactic of the spreaders of misinformation. He wouldn't screen his guests or his callers. He would just let anybody talk on his platform, wouldn't necessarily give them any pushback, and he was actually very proud about giving these people a place to share their ideas without being ridiculed.
Bruh.
Hey Art, maybe you should have ridiculed them a little bit. Just a little bit. Or screened your guests and callers. Because apparently, the Heaven's Gate cult mass unalived themselves in part due to things that were being broadcasted by this guy. So, maybe you should screen your callers and guests just a little bit. So the cat was out of the bag, the plane had left the airport, and there was no going back. So seeing as there was a bunch of people who believed things that weren't real, a number of government agencies tried their best to dispel these rumors. I'm talking NOAA, I'm talking NASA, EPA, and FA. But ideas, especially crazy ideas, don't die easy. Part of the reason for the longevity of this particular crazy idea was some really, really terrible reporting. In 2007, a local TV station in Louisiana decided to do an investigation.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails.
Bill Nichols snapped several photos of the strange clouds from his home in Stamps, Arkansas. Nichols then noticed the material collecting on the ground.
They took a little sample of water, they sent that water off to the lab.
This is water and stuff that I collected in bowls. I had it set out in my backyard on my dad's pickup truck.
KSLA News 12 had the sample tested at a lab. The results? A high level of barium. 6.8 parts per million, more than 3 times the toxic level set by the EPA.
But the thing is, this reporter slipped out a few digits. Turns out, it wasn't 6.8 parts per million, it was 68 parts per billion, with a B, with a big old B. It was 30 times less than the limit set by EPA.
Because the Poison Control Center has seen no calls about exposure to barium.
But of course, many people only heard the news report and just accepted it as fact, which just added more fuel to the fire, or atmosphere. As time has progressed, this conspiracy theory has gotten a lot more sinister. Rather than just being the American government trying to change the weather, it has devolved into thinking that the American government is trying to control our brains, or perhaps they're waging biochemical war on their citizens. So, how do we know that they aren't doing this? Well, first of all, it's impossible to prove a negative, so yikes. But there are things that we can look at that are certainly indications that this is not happening. It just doesn't make any sense. Come with me on a journey while I apply my thinking cap. Often when I'm thinking about conspiracy theories, which apparently is a lot, I find it very helpful to consider the incentives. the folks up at the top. Why are they doing this, you know? Because there are a number of different things that people claim are being done by chemtrails. It's gonna take some time, and I'm gonna talk about each of the things. First of all, so supposedly they're spraying chemicals at a pretty damn high altitude. The conditions that allow for contrails to develop are between 7.5 and 12 kilometers above Earth's surface. There's a lot of wind up there. So much so that it would be virtually impossible to accurately make sure that the chemicals that you're spreading around are gonna actually land in the place that you want them to. You would have no control over how those chems disseminate. Is that the right word? Yeah. So one thing that I think it's important to keep in mind is that governments need their citizens to be healthy in order for civilization to continue to function. I know that's kind of hard to believe at this point in history, but it does seem like civilization is kind of going downhill a little bit. So I think the rule still stands. It's fine. Don't worry about it. The point is that there is no reason to wage biochemical warfare on your own civilians. None. The government needs people to go to work so that way they can pay taxes and make babies and do all of the other citizen things that need to happen in order for civilization to just like keep on churning forward. Most of their money comes from taxes, and they need you to be able to pay those taxes. So, there is no incentive for a government to indiscriminately spray sickening chemicals onto its own population. Moreover, if they were, there would be significant spikes in hospital visits immediately following chemtrail sightings.
Poison Control Center has seen no calls about exposure to barium.
So that's it for the biochemical warfare aspect. But now we need to talk about mind control. Because this is something where, yeah, sure, there's incentive there. The government wants people to listen to them and control their minds to a degree. But let's have a look at the results, shall we? Let's just think for a moment. If they were doing this, there would be results, positive results, one would assume. They've been at it for 30 years. They gotta have a handle on it by now. If the American government was controlling people's minds, a lot of people would agree with each other on a lot of things. I don't know if you've noticed, but my God, is the world divided. Nobody agrees with anybody about anything, especially not anything related to the government. Also, Trump is just a big baby that just wants everybody to like him. So if the American government was capable of controlling people's minds, I think at the very least, Trump would have had more people come to his very sad military parade themed birthday party. There you go. That's how I'm dismissing mind control. Get out of here, mind control. Ooh. 360. Almost. Now we gotta talk about weather control. And unfortunately, this is where things get a little more cloudy. So if we use the same tactic that I've used so far, looking at incentive and then results, there is incentive. Being able to manipulate the weather would be pretty damn handy. And let's look at the results. Because there has most definitely been a shift in global climate since the 90s. No doubt about it. Although there are a lot of people who doubt it. But we're not talking about those people in this video. Maybe sometime in the future. Although, my God, is that a huge topic that that would take me a very long time to get through that. Sound off in the comments if you want me to talk about climate change denial. Please don't. So yes. There is an incentive for altering the weather, and we have a whole heap of evidence that global weather patterns are shifting. Planes are absolutely part of what is causing that change in the weather. But the incentive is to cool the planet, and the results of the chemicals emitted in engine exhaust contribute to the planet heating up. And I want to be clear, when I say chemicals here, I mean specifically carbon dioxide. One time when I was in a chemistry lab, the lab instructor was getting really upset because somebody had put a sign above the sinks that said, "No chemicals down the drain." Why did this piss him off? Because he said that water is a chemical. So technically, there are chemicals in plane exhaust, in the sense that literally everything is a chemical. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, there are certainly things in this world to be upset about. And if contrails are something that make you upset, I completely understand that. It's really annoying when you're like out camping and you're just enjoying the natural beauty of the world and there's a big man-made streak across the sky. Nobody wants to see that. Big man streak across the whole sky. No thank you. So all that I ask is that you have the right reasons for being upset. I'd ask that you don't be mad about the hypothetical possibility that these clouds could maybe somehow insidiously influence the population. Instead, I would ask that you be mad about the actual reality of their contribution to the increasing inhospitality of our planet. With that being said, and this may be something of a controversial opinion here, but I really don't mind contrails. Shocker, I know. I think that they can actually be really quite pretty. I love seeing a plane creating clouds right around sunset. It gives the majesty of the end of the day something to bounce off of, you know? Also, it just makes me think of all the people on board. Are they also looking at the sunset right now? Are they getting as much, if not, actually, they're probably getting more enjoyment out of the sunset, if we're being honest? Because they're up in the sky. They're seeing over the mountains that are blocking my view of the sunset. They're probably having a great time up there. And I just get to watch as the sunset turns their plane slightly pink. I love it. But if you are angered by contrails because of their contribution to climate change, boy, let me tell you, there are much bigger things to be angry about. The contribution of aviation to greenhouse gas emissions is a drop in the bucket.
Look at this graph!
Thanks, Chad. According to this graph, aviation only contributes about 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's nothing. The bigger problem is energy. Is that it? Yeah, electricity and heat. Those are the things that are a lot worse of an ordeal than just planes. Just plain old planes zipping around. So the big takeaway here is that there are so many things to be upset about. It is totally okay to take a step back and just let yourself enjoy watching clouds, even if they are made by humans. Oh, and that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I tried really hard to not let this end on a bummer, so just to be sure, here's my dog. I wasn't wearing a mic, so you can't hear it, but he's telling you that you should like and subscribe. And I mean, just look at his face. How could you say no to that face? Okay, bye-bye.